بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماءه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتحدون الذي لا يدركه بعد الحمم ولا يناله غوص الفطن ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وشفيع ذنوبنا سيدنا ومولانا أبي القاسم محمد وآل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين صاحب العصر والزمان خليفة الرحمن إمام الإنس والجان ولعن الله أعداهم أجمعين إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمصابنا بالحسين بن علي عليه الصلاة والسلام. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. The day of Arba'een is upon us, and this day holds with it an immense amount of messages for us to apply. It's a day of love, a day of devotion, it's a day of a commitment. And while there are many things to talk about on this day, I just want to speak a little bit in the beginning, with your permission, about the concept of leadership. We live in an era right now where we are to be in the state of intidhar of our Mawla and our awaited Imam. At the same time, we do our best to build a generation of leaders from our youth who take this deen and move it forward in order for them to prepare the grounds for the arrival of our Hussein. And in doing so, while there are many qualities of a leader that we can inject inside of this generation of ours today, we sometimes reduce a leader to that who is no doubt one that has a vision, one that thinks 10 steps ahead, one that can gather the people, motivate them, push them, educate them, enlighten them, no doubt, and ultimately reform them as well. But sometimes we tend to forget that the best of leaders in history have also been the best of followers as well. And in the study of leadership, it's often forgotten that we cannot even begin to step in the arena of leadership until we learn how to follow existing leaders. Our Holy Prophet did not become rahmatul lil alameen until he became the ultimate abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Our Mawla did not become the Amir of the Mu'mineen until he became an abd of Allah. Our Mazloom Hussein did not become the Syed of the Shuhada until, of course, he gave his own life on the path to subservience of Allah. If our Imams were gifted and granted this Adim title of being these amazing leaders for all of the universe, then that initially came from the idea of them being an abd and being subservient towards Allah. The best of leaders are initially the best of followers. And my message today on the day of Arba'een, no doubt all of us can benefit from that message, but I wish to specifically send this message out to my sisters, who inshallah are listening. That if we look at this entire journey from the 28th of Rajab to the arrival of the 2nd of Muharram, to the journey of Kufa and Sham, to now the return back to Karbala, and eventually the return back to Medina, You can see the ultimate leadership now unfolding from the day that they left Medina to the day that they arrived back in Medina. And perhaps there isn't more of an encompassing picture of leadership than that of Zainab bint Ali. My sisters sometimes, and this society does not help sometimes, they begin to believe that their value or their beauty or their greatness lies through the relationship of others. That they see themselves as either a daughter, a wife, or a mother. And while those relationships are great, and no doubt they are very pious, there is azim reward if you are a beautiful daughter to your father, a loving wife to your husband, a nurturing mother for your children. But the reality is that that's not all you are. And I want today for my sisters, because we truly need empowered mothers today and empowered women today to create and lead this generation towards our Imam. And I want our sisters to really and truly gain from this day of Arba'een the jewel left behind by Sayyidah Zainab. When she was in Karbala with her Aqa, Mawla, and brother Hussein, she taught us how to follow the hujjat of her time. When it came time for her to take the reins of that leadership post Ashura, she did it better than anybody else. Many have said, and I would agree with them, with all due respect, that this azah that we have in front of us, this ni'mah, this blessing, this mu'jazah, this miracle that we have that has allowed us to gather like this in the comfort of our centers on the day of Arba'een to shed one tear for the Ahlul Bayt could not have happened without Zainab bint Ali. When it was time for her to follow the hujjat of her time, even if it's her own brother, she never once hesitated. Whatever Hussein said to her on the plains of Karbala before Ashura, she listened. There came a moment on the day of Ashura at the time of Asad where Bibi Zainab now leaves her tent and rushes towards Zaynabiyyah, thinking for a moment that her brother had lost his life. And surrounded by enemy upon enemy, Hussein turns to Zainab and says, Zainab, go back to the khayma. Your brother is still alive. And without hesitation, she turns around and she makes her way back to the khayma, only to come back out seconds later when she hears قَدْ قُتِلَ حُسَيْنِ بِكَرْبَلَى. This jewel that was inside of Zainab when it was time for her to be the daughter of Fatima during the time before Ashura, she was the daughter of Fatima. But the same Zainab, when it was a moment for her to be the daughter of Ali post Ashura, she took the entire qafla, the entire mission, hatta imamat on her back, through Kufa, through Sham, back to Karbala, back to Medina. That leadership, that jewel, that jawhar exists in every single one of my sisters today as well. Don't limit yourself to be only a daughter or a wife or a mother. You have the qualities that Zainab bint Ali showed in this entire journey. And now we come to this pinnacle on the day of Arba'een, where now she completes this mission, and almost as if there came a moment, as I mentioned last night, that Imam Sajjad is asking Zainab, the Pupiyama, he's asking me, do you want to be led towards Medina or towards Karbala? And without hesitation, she says, I want to go back to Karbala. You would think that everything that she saw, Masaib, everything that she saw, she would never step foot or even mention the land of Karbala. But she wanted to go back to Karbala. Maybe my heart tells me to go back to her brother and say, Bhaiya, I fulfilled your mission. I fulfilled your promise. I took your sacrifice through Kufa. I took your sacrifice to the bazaar of Sham. I took your sacrifice to the courtyard of Yazid. I sat there and I talked to this mal'oon one-on-one, all for your mission. I watched as kids would drop and die on the way to Kufa and Sham. And every step of the way you could tell that there was this immense closeness between Bibi Zainab and Imam Hussein. And yes, it might be the idea of a sister and a brother, but I'd like to go one step higher and say that this was a ma'moom to her imam. This was a follower to her imam. If you look at the cause by which she would speak out, at which she would step up, it would only be for several reasons. Either injustice or to defend the wilayat of Imam Hussein. And she learns that lesson from her mother, Sayyidah Fatima Zahra. You look at Fatima, she left her house only twice. One was for fadak and one was to defend Ali alayhi salam. And Zainab was no different. This jewel exists inside of our sisters today. I asked him on this day of Arba'een, extract that jewel and outside, from inside of you. And no doubt, you need to be an amazing mother, a loving wife, an obedient daughter to your father, but there's much more to you than even I think you think sometimes. Don't allow yourself to be lowered as a relationship through others. You are a jewel in by yourself. You are the follower of Zainab bint Ali. And today is Arba'een, and today we pay tribute and we send our salams to Zainab. That without her, this mission would be incomplete. No doubt, Imam Hussein, 1,000 salams for your sacrifice, every drop of your blood, no doubt. But if it wasn't for part 2 of your mission, led by your sister Zainab, perhaps this Farsh Azah would not be ready for us today. We look at the reaction of Zainab throughout this musibah. We see that there was a special place in her heart for Hussein ibn Ali. That difficult moment on Asri Ashur, when one by one the ashab of Hussein, the family of Hussein were all gone, and now came that moment where Imam Hussein had to go to the khayma and send his wada and khudafisi and goodbye to the women. When Hussein leaves the khayma, as he begins to mount his horse or begins to travel towards the horse, a voice from behind is asking him, Mahalan, Mahala, Yabna Zahra. Slow down, the son of Zahra. What's the rush? What's the rush, Hussein? Hussein turns around and in front of him is Zainab, the same Zainab. As they say in history, there are 2 groups of people that you should never separate from each other. One is Yaqub from Yusuf, one is Zainab from Hussein. Now they have this conversation, Imam Hussein and Zainab does. And Zainab said, Bhaiya, you're leaving now. You're going. I'll take your mission forward. That's when he says that don't forget me in your namaz-e-shab. I'm leaving with you on a manat that's 4 years old. Take care of my Sakina. She can't sleep at night without my chest. Reminder of my sacrifice. And when he begins to give her nasihat, Zainab listens. Then Zainab says, Bhaiya, I also have an amanat for you as well. Our mother Fatima told me that when my Hussein goes to enter the Maidan of Karbala, do me a favor. And she begins to kiss the chest of Hussein, kiss the neck of Hussein, kiss the forehead of Hussein. Amma said, there'll come a time, Bhaiya, that when nobody has arrows or spears or weapons, they'll pick up rocks from the plain of Karbala and throw it at your forehead. Mama said to kiss that forehead. What about the chest, Zainab? There'll come a time after Imam Hussein is Shaheed. Umar ibn Saad says, I want 10 different volunteers to grab their horses, change the hooves, and trample the body of Hussein to the point where Sheikh Abbas Qummi narrates the last horse that trampled the body, the mal'oon on top of the horse, says, by Allah, when my horse trampled Hussein, I could hear the cracking of his ribs. Amma said to kiss that chest. What about that neck? She said there'll come a time where Shimr bin Dhul Jawshan jalasu ala sadr al-Hussein. Bibi Zainab had a special place in her heart for her brother Hussein. One narration I saw that says that I was assigned by Yazid to be with this qafila from the moment that they left Karbala to Kufa to Sham, back to Karbala, back to Medina. I heard every cry of every child, every shriek of every woman. I saw every moment of grief. But he says that there was this one shriek that even now, years later, haunts me at night. What is that shriek? There comes a moment on the 11th of Muharram, he says. Umar ibn Sa'd says that we are going to now move this qafila towards Kufa and Sham, but first, just to rub a few salts in their wound, take them through the maqtal of Karbala. Let them see what they're leaving behind. And so this qafila now go towards the maqtal of Karbala. Imam Sajjad is there, Pupi Amma Zainab is there. They begin to send their salams one by one to the shuhada. This man says that when this qafila approaches the body of Hussein, the trampled body of Hussein, the lifeless body of Hussein, the headless body of Hussein, it was at that moment I saw the daughter of Ali lay her eyes on the body of Hussein, and she asked one question: "Hey bhaiya, anta akhi, is that you, my brother?" And she let out a shriek. That shriek, the moment that Zainab saw Hussein's body, still haunts me today. Zainab had a special place in her heart for her brother. This qafila now moves towards Kufa and Sham. They come their way back towards Karbala. But before that, we cannot mention Arba'een without mentioning Jabir. Jabir, as you know, in his 90s, was one of the closest companions of Rasulullah. He would say that I would witness the Prophet put Hussein on his lap and kiss his neck constantly. Say, Husseinu minni wa ana min Hussein. Hussein is from me, I am from Hussein. I witnessed the love that Hussein had for Rasulullah and vice versa. So when Jabir heard of the shahadat of Hussein in Karbala, he makes a very difficult journey, with some say his servant, others say his companion Atiyah, and they make their way towards Karbala. The first Za'ir of Imam Hussein, Jabir ibn Abdullah Ansari. Atiyah narrates that Jabir was very old and his vision was not 100%. He says that Jabir enters the Maidan of Karbala. At this moment now, Hussein, his grave is still quite fresh. The other shuhada, their graves are still quite fresh. But Jabir went straight to Furat first, did a ghusl, prepared himself, took out a little piece of powder as a scent, put it on his body. Then he says, Atiyah, take me to the grave of my Aqa Hussein. He says, Jabir, there's no signs here. I don't know whose grave is who. He says, just bring me to an area where there are multiple graves. I will find the grave of my Mawla Hussein. Atiyah says that I led Jabir in the middle of the Maidan of Karbala. Jabir stood there and he says, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. And there's complete silence in the Maidan of Karbala. He then says that why is it that the follower is calling the master, but the master's not responding to the follower? He says, how could you respond, Aqa Hussein, when your head is severed from your body, your veins are cut, there's blood coming down your face? At that moment then, he no longer says, Ya Allah. Atiyah says he stands there and with the deepest of hearts says, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. At that moment, Jabir feels a radiance from a grave, realizes that in front of him is the grave of Rasulullah. He collapses on that grave, picks up the khak of Karbala. Assalamu alayka, ya Aba Abdullah, ey Aqa Hussein. I testify that you are the chosen one of Allah, that you are the son of the leader of the believers. You are the grandson of Rasulullah. How could they do this to you? How could they sever your head? How could they trample your body? He begins to cry, and cry, Atiyah says. But at that moment now, Atiyah says, Jabir, there's a qafila coming from a distance. I think it's time for us to leave. Jabir says, can you describe this qafila for me? He says that, Jabir, there's black flags everywhere. There's women draped in black. He says, are there any men in this qafila? He says, I see one old Buddha man in this qafila. His beard is white, his back is bent. It seems that he has a scar around his neck from some sort of a chain. He says, take me towards that qafila. Jabir approaches this qafila. This man that Atiyah described gets off his horse, approaches. Jabir says that this description doesn't fit anybody that I know. At that moment then, this man says, Jabir, you don't recognize me. Ana Ali ibn al-Husayn. He says, Mawla, what is this description I hear of you? That your beard is white and there's scars around your neck. Imam Sajjad picks up Jabir, hugs him very close. Can you imagine for a moment now, months and months later, Imam Sajjad meets somebody for the first time. All of this grief inside of him. Jabir says, Mawla, tell me what happened in Ashura. Imam Sajjad says, Jabir, where do I start? What do I tell you? Do I tell you about my brother Ali Akbar? How I saw my father drag Ali Akbar from the Maqtal to the Khayma? Do I tell you about my uncle Abul Fazl Abbas, where he had no arms to fall from the horse? He fell on that arrow. Do I tell you about Ali Asghar, where I saw my Mazloom Baba take him towards the Maidan of Karbala, begging for a drop of water. But Hurmala quenched that thirst with a 3-prong arrow. What do I tell you? Jabir says, Bas Mawla, that's enough. They begin to embrace. They begin to cry. Imam Sajjad says, Jabir, let's move to one side. My puppy Amma Zainab wishes to do her ziyat of Hussein. Zainab now enters the Maidan of Karbala, and the book says that she is slowly walking towards Hussein. Rabab is with her, slowly walking towards Hussein. They sit at the head of Hussein's grave, pick up the khak and put it on their head. They begin to cry and they begin to wail. They begin to send their salams. For the first time now, Zainab is able to cry without somebody whipping her or hurting her or abusing her. She begins to cry, and my heart tells me begins to perhaps empty herself out on her brother Hussein. That Mawla, Akhi, Bhaiya, I did everything you asked me to do. She comes to Hussein and says that my heart has 2 different states in it. One last jumla, then we're done. 2 statements. One is that my heart is filled with joy and contentment. The other is that my heart is destroying itself with pain. Why, Zainab? I feel content because I'm with my Bhaiya Hussein. I feel content because I took this mission back from Kufa and Sham. But why the pain and why the hurt, Zainab? Hussein, Bhaiya, please accept my apology. You gave me a 4-year-old amanat. I left her in the Zindan of Sham. Matam Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.